Hey, what's up? It's good to be back recording. I haven't recorded a video for like a month and a half, I would say, because the last time I recorded, I wanted to make a sort of backlog so I could release uh, consistently. So I recorded like 3, 4 videos that day. But today I'm back, and this is a video I've been wanting to do for a while on one of my favorite one of my favorite manga of all time. And the manga today is called Yugai Muzai Gangu, which is translated here to toys harmful but unprohibited, but it's also, you could translate it as like harmful innocent toys. It's a short story collection by Shino Ura, and of course an amazing cover, published by Beam Comics, and this one too. So just to give some background, Shino Ura, I believe, has had a story published and translated in English in Glaeolia too, which I unfortunately don't have. But both of these were published in 2019. And unfortunately, when I was looking up Ura and their socials, they've been MIA and inactive for, I think, since 2020. So on their Twitter, they haven't posted anything on their Twitter since 2020. These two are the only tankobon that they've ever released, and there hasn't been anything since, which is really sad because I really love this author a lot. And so both of these, originally, the stories were serialized online and then collected into these tankobon. So this one I haven't read yet, but this is called Fake Biography of Sanjin, and also published in the same year. But essentially what I wanted to focus on for today was just this book here, since I haven't read this one, but just showing off what it sort of looks like and some of the insides of it. I don't really know what this one is about specifically, but I'm going to go through this manga in more depth today. So, Harmful Innocent Toys, Shino Ura. If I were to describe this manga in sort of a couple of words, I would say, like, you can sort of tell Shino Ura had a bunch of ideas in their heads that they just wanted to spew out and draw and put in manga form. And the creativity in this manga is off the charts. It's one of the most entertaining, interesting, and honestly just thought-provoking stories that I've read in manga, of all time. So this is a 10 out of 10 for me, one of the best things I've ever read, and it very much suits my tastes in just storytelling, because I'll talk about it later, but it does remind me a lot of the short stories of Jorge Luis Borges. This is just one of the books I have from him, the Aleph and Other Stories. Also reminds me of another book by Stanislaw Lem called the Cyberiad, a sci-fi sort of short story collection as well. The reason why it reminds me of those two books is that, as I said before, the creativity is off the charts. It's so many cool ideas being explored in all of those books. So we'll just get started with this one. So in this tankobon, we have, I believe it was 4 short stories that we have, or maybe 5. But the first one is the title, so the titular Harmful Innocent Toys. And what we start off with is we get introduced to these 2 people. One of them is blowing bubbles, but the bubbles that come out are sentient. But the thing is that, they die when they pop, right? So what starts off the story is that the ethics of this product is discussed. It was taken off the market because of that. Are we killing these bubble creatures every time we blow a bubble? Do they have any feelings? Are they alive? That sort of thing. And the premise of this short story is that this person here, she is a director of a museum. And the girl with glasses, she is a student that has to do a school project based on this museum. So this museum is housing a lot of different products that were taken off the market due to ethical concerns, due to other concerns about the dangers and risks of keeping them and having them available to the public. And so you think about that premise and you think about the potential of all of the ideas that Shino Ura can cram into this one chapter. So just to give some examples of the different types of things that they have in here, one product that they have is called the future glasses that can see 0.5 seconds into the future. So you put it on, you see everything that happens half a second into the future. But what had happened was that most people became unmovable after a while when they become conscious of the existential question it puts on who's actually making the actions. Because you can see the future, they start to have this sort of idea of, oh, am I really controlling what I want to do, or am I not? That sort of thing. And that was taken off because of that. It'll just stop people in their tracks and render them like unmovable, because they were just having this whole existential crisis in their head, which is crazy to think about, to be honest. Another thing they had was this toy that it predicts the future of something you draw, and I think it like had the same premise of where it brought up this question of autonomy. Do you really have autonomy? Because we're dealing with the future here. So to be honest, a lot of these ideas are quite complicated. Like they explain it with all these diagrams in the manga, and it's just, yeah, it does get quite complex at times, to be honest. But the amount of text and the amount of explanations that they do give here are great. It does give a lot of depth to each of the toys, why they were taken off the market, and what the effects are of those toys. Third toy here, we have an interesting one. So we've got a little plushie or a doll, and what happens, or what this doll is that it looks different for everyone, and it also feels different for everyone. So it's a toy that fools all of your 5 senses. So for example, on these 2 sides here are exact copies of the situation that is happening now. On the one side, this girl sees the doll as a dog, feels it, smells like a dog, whatever. On the left-hand side, the museum director sees the doll as this kind of weird, slimy bird creature. And so when she looks at the student holding it, it's the slimy bird creature. And so that sort of, if you think about it, just breaks the laws of, I guess, the universe, right? It fools all of your 5 senses. So no matter how you touch it, it will feel like what you are seeing it as. So you would touch this one, the student would feel the softness of the fur. Instead, on the museum director side, if she touched it, she would feel the slime. And it even extends to if you try to describe it and write it down. So they said that if you write down what the doll looks like, it will still look different. So the writing will actually be different. If the student wrote down that it was fluffy, furry, the museum director would see it as slimy, like a bird, etc. So in that case, you could see why it was taken off the market, because it potentially is dangerous. Here it is. So they were writing down that it was white and fluffy, and it's completely different depending on who sees it. So no one knows what the true form of this doll is. And that honestly makes it scary, because it's challenging objective reality. It's challenging what is actually real and how you perceive the things around you. So that idea, that was one of my favorite toys out of this entire chapter. It's just so thought-provoking. You think about it, it kind of scares you. It's also really interesting and unique to think about as well. But yeah, that's really what I love about this manga, how crazy it goes with all of its concepts and its ideas. So let's continue on, because there's a lot of different toys that they have. And this is each chapter is quite long, actually. I've written notes down so I can remember what toy does what. So the fourth toy, this is actually insane, to be honest. This is like the most capitalist thing you can kind of think of. The fourth toy consisted of all of this merch from a non-existent anime. So what it is that this little one thing, if you see here, when you get flashed by it, you get implanted memories of this non-existent anime that you've watched as a kid, right? So she gets flashed by it. She gets all these memories of this nostalgic anime that never existed objectively. But the reason why this was made was because it was used to boost up merch sales. So you would shine someone with the wand, the flashlight, whatever. They would get all of these memories of this nostalgic anime that never existed. And so what they would do is that, oh, I used to love this anime. I'm going to go out and buy merch. And that's what they used this toy for, which is absolutely insane. Just so a tool to create more demand for an anime that never existed. They wouldn't have to spend anything on creating the actual anime itself. No, they could just implant the memories into consumers and they would go out and buy them because, you've just fed them false info, you've fed them false memories about this anime. So honestly, that is evil. It's so evil. Definitely something that would have that made sense being taken off the market for. But yeah, that was insane. That was a crazy one to think about, to be honest. It's so evil. So the next one we have is, this one's a bit of a short one, interesting one. It takes a copy of your consciousness and it puts it into this box. And I guess what happens is that the copy of the consciousness in this box is given a dream that it will never wake up from. So I think this is what it looks like if we're looking at the consciousness inside the box. And the main thing was just ethics. The consciousness is inside. Is that really someone who's alive? And if they are alive, is it really fair to just trap them in something like that? So yeah, that was quite interesting. And if you notice, like right now, going forward with all these stories and all these toys, a lot of like existential topics to think about: autonomy, the future, perception of reality, that sort of thing. One of my favorite things to read about. So again, another reason why this manga is so fitting to my taste. So let's move on. We've got another one that is this little badge thing that branches out, and what it does is it showcases the sort of different options or different branching worlds that diverge from your every action. Let me just find so for example, it would branch out like this. Maybe if you flipped a coin, if it landed heads or if it landed tails, it would branch out into all the different possibilities of the futures that would have stemmed from it. So pretty much like a butterfly effect. But you can see what each of those worlds are just by looking at the little triangles in those. So you can sort of think about how that would screw some people over in figuring out what their actions mean, how impactful everything they do is. These are some examples of, I guess, different branching worlds where the student killed the museum director and the museum director also killed her, stuff like that. But it's not reality, I guess, or some can argue it is reality. They're just different branching worlds that they can experience, which is just insane to think about. And what's even more insane is that this whole time it's revealed that the student at the start, they had drank some water with a little drug that was put in it by the museum director. And what that drug does is it makes you a second personality, and it sort of removes you from yourself and you sort of watch yourself live how you normally would. So it's like watching a movie of yourself in real time. And once you go back, like once the effect of the drugs are lost, you will sort of go back into your usual self. But one of the ethical issues with it was that while you are removed from yourself, you kind of don't have any control over it. You don't retain any of the emotions. You won't feel anything in that time period because a copy of your personality is living it for you. So if you think about that, crime would be a really big thing if someone were to abuse this and exploit it. And so this is like an example of what it felt like, them watching themselves do everything, and it just screws you over in terms of how you feel and what you think is real and yourself. But yeah, I believe this is coming to the end of the chapter where, yes, so all of the toys that were shown affecting how the girl thinks and how she perceives reality. Such an interesting topic. And also a really interesting thing as well is that Shino Ura likes to sometimes include photography from just real life embedded into some of their stories. So I honestly can't pick a favorite story in this entire manga because all of them are really, really good. And I'm taking my time explaining all of it because it's such an amazing set of stories that are so unique. I can't think of anything else that is similar to this in manga. That's why I brought up Borges. That's why I brought up Stanislaw Lem as well in terms of the creativity. But yeah, so continuing on, I should have said at the start, but yeah, I guess full spoilers for all of these. Although there's not really a plot anyways, it's just more really fun explorations of interesting topics to think about, because the next story we have is called Imaginary Time Recreation, and it's a time stop chapter. So our main character, she is stuck in a world where time has stopped. And so one thing for me that I've always found interesting in manga, in stories, anything, is immortality and the feeling of immortality. I think over time I've realized that there's a lot of series that don't really treat immortality well. It doesn't feel realistic as much. Maybe because I've read Borges, he does a lot of stuff with immortality. One of his stories actually called The Immortals, which I'll talk about later. But in this case, yes, this main character has been stuck in this world that has stopped moving for years and years, probably hundreds of years, to the point where they've developed a sort of secondary imaginary versions of themselves to feel less lonely. And in this, it's just nothing really happens, but we see how this character spends their time, their infinite time in this world. They've been pulling out, I think, what are these? These grenades? Yeah, like grenade switches, piling them up. So this is just another example of the photography. You've got the imaginary version and the main character. You have cases where, let me just find it here. Yeah, so they've grown very apathetic, which I think is a good sign of like immortality being portrayed well in a story. Living thousands of years, of course you'd be apathetic. Of course you wouldn't feel the same as somebody else. They would go around talking to people, making random imaginary conversations, one-sided dialogue, just walking about, exploring the world that has just stopped. And yeah, this is just really interesting panels, showcases of things. They clearly do not care because time has stopped for too long. One of the activities that they do is that they make paper planes and they throw it into the sky. And you've got a really cool panel of that there. All of them just stuck in the sky. Another case where they've essentially created a whole planet of garbage. So one of the other things they did to pass their time was to throw garbage into the air, launch it into the air. And they've done that so much that an entire planet has formed. Its own gravity has been established from the amount of mass of garbage that they've just chucked into the sky. And so just thinking about this, thinking about the scale of the things that they've done in this infinite time is just something that is so interesting to think about, and so cool to see as a like visually represented like this. And so yeah, another really cool story that is not as complex as the first one, but explores the concept of, I guess, immortality, infinity, time, and the effects it has on us as people. So let's continue on. It still goes on. Whoops, my bad. I thought we ended off. But this is a little part that showcases the start of when they realized time was stopped. The tears are still in place of when they realized their world has just stopped moving around them. But it's just a really sad ending where they just start playing Shiritori and it just ends there. So really sad, another really existential story as well. But moving on, this one is another crazy story, especially with the visuals. So the art that Ura does in this chapter specifically is off the charts. We'll show why. This chapter is called The Goldfish Mermaid. So what it is that we follow these synthetic goldfish mermaids. So they were man-made, and they are this immortal creature that can't see. It can only detect shapes, does not need to eat, will regenerate. It is pretty much indestructible. Also, it is like dumb. It has no instincts, no desires, no motivation to do anything. They literally just float and exist. That is all they do, and they are immortal. So sometimes they just stick around certain areas. And what we see over the course of this story is that how they have existed over time. So initially they were created as pets with no intelligence for people. And what we see over time is that some people have been advocating for their freedom and their rights. Save the Kingyo. You see that as well. Save the mermaids. Is Kingyo mermaid or goldfish? Might be goldfish. Save the goldfish. And so this like sort of movement had started where people were advocating for their rights, but it's a whole nother thing to debate, like whether they're actually alive. Can they feel anything? You can think of them as just like a synthetic doll. No intelligence, no emotions, anything like that, but still ethical issues were brought up. And it just exists. So in one instance, we've had some people try to dissect it and see what happens. When they open it up, all they can find is this code. So it's just some weird physics-breaking code that created this mermaid. And so no matter what you do, it's indestructible, but it also does not do anything other than float around. So this one here has just been stuck in a basement for years and years. And if you just think about it, these things just existing, stuck in basements till the end of time. And, a little bit of a spoiler, we will see what happens when it does reach the end of time, the end of the planet, the end of the universe, whatever. And so in some cases as well, we had people encountering these mermaids, trapping them, but wars happen, conflict escalates, where in the future now, these mermaids have still survived. Nothing bothers them, nothing will ever get rid of them. And this is just one example of what I mean by the art going crazy. It feels really cinematic as well in this specific double page spread, just of the mermaid wandering past the final wars of humanity. So we're in the future right now. And another thing to note as well, they can also hold diseases and toxins. So in the future, humanity started to see them as like a bad omen or a bad sign. And what do? They launch them into space to get rid of them, which I guess makes sense if they hold all the toxin and the diseases of wars and stuff. But again, they are indestructible, immortal. So what do they do instead? They float in space endlessly. And they can even survive black holes. They float through black holes. They go to other planets just wandering, going nowhere, no goal in mind, pretty much witnessing the start and the end of humanity. And they come back, I guess, to Earth, and they get worshipped as like this deity, this immortal god. But time still passes. No matter what, time still passes. They have not changed. They continue to just exist. And this one's a really interesting, a little bit like of a complicated thing as well. Like, it's talking about abstract ideas now. So the abstract idea of, I guess, paths or journeys are represented with this god. But once humanity extinguishes and is extinct, these abstract ideas will also go extinct. And everything that remains is only just the goldfish mermaid till the end of time. And I really love this as well. This is depicting the behavior of the mermaids, because again, they can't see anything. They can only sense shapes, and they have a tendency to just stick around, follow whatever shapes are in front of them. So in this case, we have a depiction of two goldfish mermaids sort of infinitely and forever circling around each other in space, because that's the only things that the only object that they see is each other. So it's just a spiral, an infinite, I would say death spiral, but they are, again, immortal and indestructible. So just an infinite spiral into the nothingness. And so stories like that, which just about the end of humanity, infinity, time, space, again, another topic that is so thought-provoking and just so interesting to think about. Again, very existential topics too, but represented in manga form is just the way that Shino Ura does it is out of this world. And so we come now to the final chapter called Water in the Past. And what this one is like, there is a sort of ability or feature of water that can be used or harnessed to bring back someone to life briefly. So they use this water to like try to talk to, I guess, past relatives or past friends who are dead. They are called, you can call them either water corpses or dying water. I think dying water is a really cool name. But unfortunately, because they're water, you can't really understand them. It's just splashes. So it is quite sad if you think about it. They talk about the features of dying water. It can absorb the moisture off of different things as well. So potentially it can be dangerous. If you see here, all of the moisture and water from the apple is just taken from the dying water. And dying water is, they are a temporary thing, similar to like the bubbles at the start of the story, although the bubbles are little entities that die. These ones you can think of it as just as holograms of these dead people. And so what we have is actually, I think, the record they say is the longest a dying water has stayed alive is 140 years. And our main character is actually a time traveler. And so their dying water that they resurrect is, I think, one of their friends. And so this time traveler wants to see the effects or the impacts of time travel on dying water. So they go to the future and they try to bring up and resurrect the dying water once again. And it is, it's also another ethical thing. These dying waters are they actually the people who are dead? And if so, can they feel? Like, can these dead people feel emotions? Can they experience things? Because they clearly can understand and interact with us. But is it right to keep bringing them back? Is it right to, not let them have the peaceful death that they may deserve? And you've got this really sad double-page spread of just at the end of time, I guess at the end of the earth, the time traveler and their dying water friend who has actually waited for them all of these years, conversing and interacting once again. So that's the end of the book. A really amazing manga that is unique, one of a kind. I can't recommend it enough, and that's why I spent so much time just talking about it in depth. So I should have put in I'll put in the description like a spoiler warning for the whole book. But what I'll talk about now is just what this manga reminds me of. So it reminds me of Borges, of course, who's an Argentinian writer, born 1899, died in 1986. You might know him from the Library of Babel story. He was the one that created the short story of that. So the Library of Babel is the library that has all of these infinite chambers with all of these books. And these books contain every single permutation and combination of all of the letters in, I guess, the English alphabet. And in that story, there's actually a website that someone created for that. You can think of it as similar to the infinite monkey theorem, where it was like if a monkey typed out random things for the end of time, there is a non-zero chance that they could type out all of Hamlet or something, or all of one of Shakespeare's plays. And also the art here is done by MC Escher, who does, I think, a lot of the other Borges Penguin Classics cover art as well. Amazing artist too. But yeah, the Aleph and Other Stories is a collection of short stories that Borges has done. Borges has only done short stories. I believe it's because in his later age, he did go blind. So he had, I think his wife, he would recite his stories to his wife and she would write it down. A lot of stories, also very complex stories as well. I will not say that I understand everything because the way he writes, he's very well read, references a lot of different things, both other texts, cultural references to politics. But the reason why Shino Ura's manga reminds me of Borges is because of how they explore the infinite, how they explore fantasy, and a lot of existential topics as well. So, for example, there is a story here that is called The Immortals, right? So this is the first story that comes up. And The Immortal is a story about a man that is going out to find some, I guess, the immortal people. It's been a while since I read this story, but let me try to remember what exactly it is. And it does focus on a lot of what being immortal is. So this person does encounter a group of immortals, and they find themselves pretty much reenacting the story of the Odyssey. And for that, I guess I won't really spoil why it's specifically the Odyssey and Homer. But it's the question of, to know that we're immortal is torture. We are immortal when we don't think of death, like animals. So when animals are just living on instinct, they are technically immortal because they're not thinking of death. What makes us immortal is having no thoughts or no, how would I describe it? Having no thoughts or not knowing of death is to be immortal. And in this story, it's kind of looking at how being immortal is torture. There is no motivation to do anything. There's no nothing that time can do to help with anything. And because if a human is immortal, then they will technically experience every single thing that humanity will experience in their infinite lives. So their individuality is eroded and they become sort of humanity itself. And I don't think I'm really explaining the story correctly or like accurately, to be honest, because it is very complicated. There's mentions of a lot of different places and a lot of different terms as well. But I highly recommend it. Even if you don't read the entire book, just read The Immortal. Really good one. Another good one as well is the Aleph, which is the titular story of this. The Aleph is about a point in space that contains every other single point in space in the universe that you can see all at once. So it's like sort of in this orb in the story. This person wants to use the Aleph to create the best poem ever created by looking at all of these different points of the earth at once. And so when you're looking at this orb, it's not like you look at a scene, swipe. No, you see everything instantaneously, all these visions coming at once. And so because it's something that we can't ever experience in reality, there is no way for us to describe the experience of looking to the Aleph with our language. And so what happens in the story is that when they submit their poem that they've written from the assistance of the Aleph, the poem gets second place. The reason why is because they can't ever describe the beauty and describe the scenes of what the Aleph shows us in our language, because our language is limited to what we can describe, right? And so if we can't describe it with language, this then also affects how it comes out and how it is conveyed to other people. Another really cool thing about that story is how it also affects our memory. So if we can't describe sights like that we see in the Aleph, if we can't remember it and describe it with our language, how are we supposed to assign a way to remember it in the first place? You know, if you can't in your head figure out a way to describe the scenes, then how are you going to remember it, right? And it's also a really, really cool point where the narrator uses it as like a metaphor, as a parallel to how he can't remember the face of his lover. So it's a parallel to how he is unable to describe the emotions of pain and loss that he's felt because his lover is dead, I believe. So that was just, that blew my mind. It's one of the best short stories I've ever read, ever. But yeah, Borges, highly recommend them. Fictions is another one of their collections. Another short story collection that focuses a lot on dreams. Not the Sect of the Phoenix. I forgot the name of it, but dreams, labyrinths, time, infinity. Also another one that I want to briefly talk about, or at least recommend, it might be in here, House of Asterion. That one is great. I highly recommend that too. I'm not going to spoil it because it is dependent on you not knowing anything about it, but the House of Asterion is another thing I would recommend from Borges. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about Borges because it reminds me, this manga reminds me of Borges. On top of that, the Cyberiad by Stanislaw Lem, another sci-fi thing that is similar in a way where it explores a lot of these cool, different existential topics. It follows two creators or makers that are these, like, I guess, entities, creatures, aliens that invent the most outlandish things. I think the first short story in the Cyberiad was the two creators. One of them had created a machine that could rid everything that started with the letter N or something like that, and it just would go into complete chaos with how the story goes about. And it's sort of like a story by story thing, so you always follow their adventures and how they just screw everything up with their insane inventions and all of that. I don't have the book here because I gave it to a friend, but I would also recommend the Cyberiad as well. But yeah, in terms of the rest of this video, I think that's all I have to say for Shino Ura. Once I do read the fake biography of the Sanjin, I will definitely show it off as well. So I'll just flip through again what it sort of looks like. So I don't know anything about this manga, but the arts, and I love how creative. It's just so creative, everything that Shino Ura does. Very much fits the ideas that they are conveying as well. It's very dark, very atmospheric too, mixing fantasy and I guess sci-fi as well. But yeah, I mean, in the future, I do want to talk a little bit more about books on top of manga. I don't think I would ever do a video just solely on books, because I do read. Well, I haven't been reading that much lately. Since COVID, I've been like reading a lot. Currently, what I'm reading now is Coin Locker Babies by Ryu Murakami, one of my favorite authors. Highly recommend Almost Translucent Blue. That's one of my all-time favorite books from everything I've ever read. But yeah, I guess what I wanted to do with this video was just to bring some of my other interests as well. So books are the easiest things to bring in. I don't really watch that many movies, but books are the main thing. So if I ever see like a comparison or something relevant in a book that is related to the manga, I'll probably bring it up in the future, because yeah, it's just, I like to read and just talk about whatever. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, just reiterating that this is one of the best things that I've ever read, ever, in terms of manga, in terms of stories. So please try it out. It's an amazing story, an amazing manga, and an author that I'm, hoping for the return of one day. I really do want to see more stuff from them. I'm not sure what's going on, but the works that they have right now, I'm very grateful that they are collected in tankobon and relatively easy to find. And so you should be able to find this book anywhere. In terms of being translated in English, it is not officially translated in English. There are probably other ways you could find scanlations of it, but yeah, not at the moment. Just that one story in Glaeolia 2. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this one. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.